Does it get much uglier than this? There I am. Not quite as ugly, but I'm close. Anyway, guys, this video today is brought to you by reusing your junk. Everybody and their dog that does an LS swap to keep their truck manifolds. And unfortunately, they're pretty ugly. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to grind one down, polish it up. Well, I'm gonna clean it up a bit so it looks, you know, pretty nice. These manifolds here, I mean, I'm looking to do somewhat of a budget build on this LQ4. Down the road, once we tube the front end a bit, we'll have more space for longer manifold, header style manifolds. But for now, instead of using Chinese junk from eBay, I'm gonna reuse the truck manifolds that are more than fine for the power levels that I'm going to make. As you can see, they're pretty ugly. This is where the heat shield mounts to these. Pretty ugly. So what we're going to do is grind these off, cut these off. We will fill them if we need to with some weld. Make sure we remove all the casting marks and get a cleaner product to put on the engine, just so it looks somewhat presentable. Okay, so what I'm trying to do first is loosen these up, but they're not working. So I'm going to grab my trusty grinder and I'm cutting them off here, and then we will grind them and see what happens. So all the bolts are cut off. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take down some of the excess material here with the grinding bit, or the grinding wheel, move the manifold around and take off these casting marks. That's it so far. Let's get to it. Okay, so it's all ground down. It does take a lot more time to smoothen it out, but we got the heavy casting marks off. I'm gonna go eat now, and then when I come back, I'm gonna do this line, and then we'll do some finishing grinding. But that's it so far. Once we get into it too, what you're gonna do is you're gonna let the disc do the work on the, where is that disc? I got a disc here somewhere. So the 40 grit disc that I'm gonna do next, you kind of let that flow over and keep the grinder moving at all times so it'll follow the contour and you're not going to have any straight lines. So I have my mask on if it's muffled. I forgot to cut that off. That's what I'm gonna do next. Okay, so we got that all ground down on that side, the other side. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna smooth out the flange. Be very careful, keep the grinder moving. If you gouge out a spot, the gasket might not fit as good as it should. So make sure that your grinder is constantly in motion. And there you go, guys. Again, we're gonna touch this one up with the 40 grit, but for now, that's where we're having it. So this one ground down pretty good. Little bit of weld has to go here, just a tack or two, and then we'll grind it down. And other than that, it's pretty close to where we need to go. And then we'll hit it with the 40 grit. I'm not sure exactly where I'm gonna have to cut this down to put on the V-band, but whenever I put the V-band, if it's lower here, then I'm going to grind this one down too and make sure that it's nice and clean. So next, I will clean off this part of the flange as best I can and get that tacked in. But for now, off to a basketball game. Okay, so since we have to weld a spot, we're gonna have to learn how to weld. So for my birthday, Jamie picked me up this MIG / flux core welder. I did do some welding before, but it was at least 12 years ago since the last time I really welded anything. So, and the welder that I used back then, well, that welder was a lot better with gas and everything. And yeah, so let's try to get this figured out. So since I'm using flux core, we're gonna throw in the flux core wire. When you're using flux core, you have to make sure that your trigger is negatively charged. On this one here, pretty self-explanatory, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now I follow these list of instructions and get the feed started. So this here is your generic flux core wire. Flux core and MIG wire is different. The flux core would have flux inside and burns different than the MIG. All right, so I got the wire fed. What I'm going to do now is plug it in. I'm gonna extend the wand to make the cord as flat as possible and start feeding the flux core wire. So now we got the TIG torch or the MIG torch all set up. The wire is fed, 0.035 or whatever it is for flux core. Now we're gonna fill up this hole. Okie dokie, I tried to copy the weld. Oh, there it is. I tried to copy the weld. It wouldn't come up. It looks like it got penetrated a bit now. Sorry about the mess. I have to figure out the wire speed a little bit better, but overall it's not too bad. Not too bad, a little sloppy. But for flux core, it didn't shoot off a lot of crap. I mean, it did a little bit, but yeah. So I'm gonna get that ground down now and we'll see where we're at. Okay, so this is it ground down. You can see I might lay a bead right over top of here, just to be safe. I don't want to grind down any further. It is fairly deep, that hole in there, inside, that I will die grind out later. But as you can see, there's a little cracking there. So I'm just gonna run a bead right along that. All right, there it is. So I did 2 lines actually. Don't worry about that shaded part, it's covered. I'm figuring out the pace here, but usually it's too late. By the time I come to the end, I'm figuring out the puddle. But it'll come. So let's grind this down, see where we're at. Okay, dokie. So that is about it. There's a little low spot there. It is welded all the way through. I don't want to grind a whole lot more around there because it is pretty low in other spots. So I don't want to keep chasing. So now what I'm going to do is take the 40 grit and smooth all this out. But not bad. All right, so we are at this stage now. As you can see, they are all pretty well rounded off. So what I'm gonna do now is put the other disc back on, clean up around the flange the best I can. Unfortunately, I don't have any brush bits to remove what's in here, and I can't reach it with the disc. So that's where we're at now. There you go. It's the best I'm gonna get with that grinder disc. Not too shabby at all. There's a couple gouges here that we'll try to take out with the other disc. And then, like I said, in here, we'll have to get that with the brush disc. But looks pretty good for now. Okay, so this one is cleaned up as good as it's going to get for right now. I could go get the brush and, you know, run that, clean it up a little bit better. But I'm cutting the ends off here for V-clamps, so there's not much sense of finishing them much more than they are right now, because they're gonna get welding done to them. There'll be some slag, and they'll just become, you know, messy again. So I'm gonna throw this on the engine, see what it looks like. This here's manifold 1 that I previously did. And this one here is manifold 2, the one that I filmed for you guys. And you could take it, you know, a little bit further if you wanted to. Keep polishing and grinding, hit it with sandpaper, work your way up. There's really not much sense of doing that and then, you know, cutting, grinding, welding. What I'm going to do a little bit more, because I'm going to build a hot side myself. Yeah, so anyway guys, that's how I cleaned up my truck manifolds. I'm gonna leave it at that for this video. I'll get to part 2 of our hood install. Watch that video if you haven't. And take care guys, like and subscribe. I'm Billy Mack, welcome to my garage.